Welcome back to the Senior Hour. I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host, Dr. Jean Dorio, on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. And our next guest this morning is Micheal Dougherty, who is the Community Relations Representative for the Behavioral Health Unit at Henry Mayo Newhall Hospital. Wow, that was a mouthful.
It was, yeah. Well, it was even more of a mouthful when they were known as the Memorial Hospital.
Oh, I know.
They dropped that.
Know,
it's a little easier to say now.
Well, I'm so used to saying that, but I thought, no, you need to put it down here, Barbara, and leave out the memorial. So I wrote it and I read it. That way I knew I would get it right.
Yay for you.
And what are we talking about today?
Well, we just celebrated Thanksgiving. How was your Thanksgiving, by the way?
Oh, it was lovely.
Dr. Dorio?
Very good.
Did you overeat, Dr. Dorio?
I never do. We were probably the youngest. Robin and I were the youngest of the people at ours. We had none of the girls were home. So my mom is 94 going on 95, so she was the oldest, but we had people in their 90s, 80s, 70s, 60s, and the youngest was 55, I think. So we had the whole gamut, but it was a lot of fun, a lot of turkey, a lot of stuffing.
Well, yes, it's quite the opposite with our gathering. Russ and I were the oldest. And there were 21 of us there.
Wow.
6 great-grandchildren.
You had generations
5
there, didn't you? Wow,
grandchildren.
Great. Okay, so...
And my daughter and my son and their families and Russ and me.
Wow, so 4 generations there? Is that right? Wow. How was yours, Mike?
Excellent. And the reason that I asked you that and brought it up is because, of course, we're in the holiday season.
Yep.
And with that comes seasonal depression.
Yes.
It really does. And here's something that I find interesting. Most people think about Alzheimer's and dementia as being the thing that they really have to watch out for the seniors. But there's really a silent killer out there that poses a real threat to them, and that's
greater than Alzheimer's.
Yeah, because it is silent and you don't know it's there. It's depression.
Absolutely.
And a depressive disorders is actually among the very top problems for seniors that face seniors in terms of mental health today.
Depression.
And of course, those who have chronic diseases and are prone to suffer from depression, of course, it all comes out now. But if you're dealing with, let's say, you've had a surgery, you've had heart surgery or something like that, a lot of that causes depression. And of course, this time of the year, my goodness, there's so many things that are happening for seniors. First of all, they may have lost a loved one. They may be thinking about a son or a daughter that no longer lives near them or is no longer alive. There's also the situation where they're thinking about Christmas has gone by, and all of that can lead to depression. It can really bring them down. And the fact that maybe they can't get out and shop like they used to, or maybe there are things during the holiday that they used to do that they can't do anymore, or that's not as easy for them to do anymore.
Physically, they can't do them. And sometimes for some of our seniors now who are on fixed income, they financially can't do what they used to do. It used to be they have money coming in, but then they started to pack it away and save, putting their nest egg out, but now drug prices are going up, costs to live, rent, or even taxes are going up. They're being pushed to the edge of being marginalized, where sometimes they're living alone and they're not able to face that loneliness and isolation that they didn't have before.
Exactly. And families get a little confused a lot of times dealing with seniors and their family because, first of all, they may not know what is appropriate to include them in, what may be too much for them, or at what point they have to say, are you ready to go? Are you ready to leave? And also seniors can easily get insulted by not being included or not taken on a trip or what have you, or at least be asked, how would you like to go? Would you like to participate in that? So it can be kind of tricky, not only for the senior, but also their families.
Right. And, some people experience like hearing problems, visual problems, or physical problems, but They also have incontinence that they don't want to talk about. And, some of them are wearing diapers and they don't like that idea at all. And,
That's right.
That affects their hygiene, and then their confidence deteriorates, and then they're not invited and their dignity diminishes. So there's so many things with seasonal problems and seasonal depression that when you're not older, you tend to not be aware of them, but when you're older, you become more understanding of the plight that others are going through.
That's right, especially if you're experiencing that yourself.
Absolutely.
And we probably need to mention, Dr. Dorio, as you well know, and as you well know, Barbara, because I've been on the show a number of times and I brought this up, but people tend to not understand why depression is dangerous, because untreated depression that becomes clinical depression can lead to suicide.
That's right.
So it's not something to take lightly, not at all.
The rate of suicide is much higher. I think before in the past, statistically, you had mentioned how high that number truly is, and we don't want to face that reality.
And it's growing. Here at Santa Clarita, we have had an increased number of suicides over the past several years. Mm-hmm. So, and believe it or not, it's uncharacteristically been older white males. Mm-hmm. Who have been the ones topping the list. So that's sad. We don't want that to happen. We want people to
Why does it happen, Mike?
Can't really say. And the reason for it is that they're deceased, so there's no way, unless you get anecdotal information from their family members or whatever, it's really kind of difficult. The sheriff, we talked to them about this, and they said, well, it really is difficult to trace it back.
But, so if they are close to family, they have friends, there's no doubt that there are going to be signs that they're expressing, they're showing that could have maybe allowed us to intervene beforehand. But, we're not, I think the purpose of our show and you working at Henry Mayo is to put this out there, make people aware that having an understanding, looking at their neighbor, their senior neighbor who might be living alone, and understanding that maybe they're going through some of these problems, but they're not going to come out and say, I'm depressed, I'm sad, I'm lonely, I'm isolated. And I think our awareness to step in and do something about that is important.
Well, then it's perfect that you brought that up, because, if you're going to fight elder depression, and especially looking at now at senior depression and seasonal depression, family members don't know what to look for. Sometimes caregivers really don't either. And so here are some things that you can look for. Persistent sadness, trouble falling asleep or sleeping too much, decreased socialization, meaning they don't want to go out, they don't want to do things, they don't want to spend time with people, loss of interest in usually pleasant activities that they enjoy. It could be anything, gardening, it could be doing crossword puzzles, it could be getting together with their neighbor to play cards. Suddenly they don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. Excessive worrying, irritability, feeling worthless, helpless, or hopeless, and they'll make statements. And especially if they say things like, well, you'd be better off if I wasn't around. That's a biggie.
That's huge.
Yeah. Wow. And then another one is giving away prized possessions. Changes in appetite. They could suddenly start not eating, or they might start eating a whole bunch. Mm-hmm. Crying spells, just crying. And, it's likely that if you ask them what's going on, they just say, oh, nothing, I'm just, sad about it. I'm thinking about Christmas has gone by. Trouble focusing and remembering or making decisions. And those are just some of the things. But the idea is you want to connect the dots before it's too late. You can't walk up to somebody who has clinical depression. Now, let me explain that for you. Everybody has a down day. Everybody has the blues.
Does.
So things aren't going well, don't feel right today. But usually, it doesn't usually last longer than a week.
No, it doesn't.
But don't ask the question, are you depressed? Because people are just going to deny it.
Yeah, they'll just say, I'm just feeling down. But if it lasts for 1 to 2 weeks, it's likely clinical depression. In which case, if you were to say to them, come on, just, go take a shower, get cleaned up, put on some makeup, whatever, we're going to go out and have some fun, they physically can't do that.
That's true.
They have to have help, and that means a therapist, and possibly they may need some medication.
And, I think that's one of the fears that our seniors are listening right now and saying, hey, they're going to put me on drugs. I'm not going to my doctor. I'm not going to a psychiatrist. I don't want to be drugged up. And some of these medications are capable of doing that. They see their friends, staggering around like Frankenstein, not being able to sometimes cope with life because of these drugs.
You're right.
So they don't want to do that. That's a difficult thing to admit, but then their fears of getting treatment are profound.
But as you know, I work in the behavioral health unit, and I can tell you over the years that I've been there, so many times we see people coming in and they're at their worst. They're having a crisis, and sometimes they just look like they're destroyed. I mean, they're so down they can't even look up at you. But it's wonderful to see them when they're being discharged, and they're doing so much better. They're happy again. They're able to smile. They're able to function. They're able to deal with life. And that's what we want.
Well, now, how do they get admitted to?
Well, in our case, as I said, we're there for an acute episode. So somebody has to get to the point where they are suicidal with a plan, homicidal with a plan, or what is known as gravely disabled, which is a little tougher to define, but basically they can't get through the day without help.
Well, now, does that mean that a medical condition would put them in the hospital, in a regular hospital bed to begin with?
It could very well, and I'll tell you what happens sometimes. If somebody also has a mental health component, then somebody from the behavioral health unit or our psychiatrist will be called in to do a consult or come in to assess them. And often we definitely do put people on a hold right there in their bed, right in that room, which means that they're also getting psychiatric help as well.
But still, once again, our listeners are going, one flew over the cuckoo's nest. They remember the straitjackets and the Haldol's and the medications that kind of knock people right off the block. And
you forgot to mention Nurse Ratched.
Nurse Ratched, great. She won the Academy Award.
She sure did. Louise, I can't think of her last name. Fletcher, you're right.
So, but, we're facing these things. But, before we get to institutionalizing our seniors, I think that socializing them, like we were talking with Robin Clow from the Senior Center, the first half of our show is important. And for people to be able to see that there is a place for our seniors to go and have that socialization. The biggest problem, though, is for that senior to take the first step. And, if you're doing really good and you're up and mobile and driving, you can still be depressed, but that's when you volunteer, right, Barbara?
That's exactly right.
That's when you get out and you start saying, I need to do a little bit more. And just that sense of volunteering, like you said earlier, Barbara, that sense and that feeling makes you feel better. It brings back your self-worth and that dignity. But let's say you're more debilitated. Still, you should find a way to get over there. We will come and pick you up and bring you over if need be. But that socialization is so important to our seniors here in Santa Clarita, and we just can't ignore those people who are living in their homes right now and not taking advantage of the resources that we have here.
Well, now I just have to say this for the listener that's out there saying, oh my goodness, Dr. Dorio brought up One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Nurse Ratched and all of that horribleness, and I'm never going to go there. I just have to say, our behavioral health unit is nothing like that. It is very clean, very nice. We have all kinds of things going on, including activities and crafts, and our patients are treated wonderfully. And I have to tell you, this is not a long-term facility. The average length of stay is 5 days, and that's it. We want to get you in there. What our goal is to get you back to functioning and to get you back to your life. So we're not looking to keep you for a long time, and Nurse Ratched does not work there. Our nurses and CNAs and our staff there are wonderful, and they have such a kind heart for dealing with our patients, I have to tell you.
And I ditto that. That's you're absolutely right, Mike, that we have a superb place for those who are really, really at the edge and going over that cliff. But my hope is once they come out, they can take advantage of all the resources that we have in our city to keep them out so that they can continue to flourish in life.
That's right. And when we discharge our patients, we always make sure that they have an appointment with not only their physical doctor, but also with a mental health specialist as well, if they need it. And in some cases, they need follow-up with chemical dependency problems where they're either using alcohol or drugs. So we take care of that. We make sure that that is scheduled for them when they go out so they won't feel like they're by themselves.
Well, if you have someone who needs longer than a 5-day span, do you have another facility that they may go to?
No, we don't, but definitely if the average length of stay is 5 days. And I have to tell you, we had somebody that needed to stay with us for, I want to say they were with us for 6 months because we had to wait for a bed to become available in the next facility that they were going to go to. So they stayed with us for that amount of time. I've heard of another facility like ours, an LPS designated facility that had a patient that stayed with them for a year. From Christmas to Christmas, waiting for a bed. As you know, some types of beds out there in facilities for people with mental issues are not easy to come by.
No, they're not.
And so, unfortunately, but that does not happen very often. But it does. But if somebody needs to be there, they definitely can stay with us a longer time. We have people that are there for 14 days. We have people that are there for 30 days. It just depends on what they need. And they work with a doctor every single day, and of course the therapist and such, so they can determine when they are prepared to go. And a lot of times it's the patient who says, I just don't feel like I'm ready.
Yes.
So we need to be sensitive to that. But besides the mental health issues with the holiday, there's a couple of other issues that are certainly foremost in your mind, Dr. Dorio, and that is things like staying hydrated, not going off their diet too badly, not going out there and doing too much and causing themselves to be worn out and unhappy. And there are just a lot of things that we want seniors to think about during this time of the year. We want them to have a wonderful holiday time, but we don't want it to make them sick because they overdid or overate and got themselves in trouble. And it's easy to do.
Oh, yes, it is.
Now, Dr. Dorio, you said you never overeat. I didn't know if I saw a twinkle in your eye when you said that, but most of us are prone to have just an extra slice of pumpkin pie or an extra slice of something, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, it was interesting because at our Thanksgiving meal up at my daughter's in Palmdale, I got the plate of food, and I had very, very tiny portions of everything on there. And I thought, okay, good. I can go back and get another one with more teeny tiny portions.
That's the way to do it. That's actually the way I do it. First of all, I determine whether I liked what it was that I
That's
got.
right.
And if I liked it, I can always go back and get lots more, right?
That's right. And that's what I did. And Russ looked at me. He says, "You're going back again?"
I have to
said,
tell you,
yes.
I saw Dr. Dorio at the soup plantation sometime back, and he looked at me and smiled, and he said, "It's healthy."
That's right. And with our Thanksgiving, Robin and I cooked. She cooked half, and I cooked the other half, and I was responsible for the turkey. And not that I'm a connoisseur of foods, but I want turkey in a certain way. Now, I prepared the turkey and it came out all right. People really liked it, but I didn't like it. So, and that, my portions, I ate mostly the things that Robin made as opposed to what I made. So, it was more, my taste was reflective of my poor cooking than anything else.
Your poor cooking.
Well, that also helps seniors stay mentally healthy as well, because physical health certainly has a lot to do with your mental health, and vice versa.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And, we ask them, to, as well, when they're psychologically okay, physically they do better also. And during this time of year, of course, we talking about overeating, but you also want to make sure that people are still up and exercising, that they're staying hydrated, like you said, Mike, but also that they're taking their medicine correctly. Sometimes people say, I'm feeling great and, I don't need this medicine anymore. But indeed, it could be true. But for the most part, you have to assure that you stay compliant with what your doctor wants you to do to stay healthy.
I'm so glad you brought that up,
Yes.
Dr. Dorio, because I know you know this one. But one of the main reasons that we see people return to the behavioral health unit is because they got off their medication.
Yep.
So simple. But they, for whatever reason, whether their family said, hey, you don't need it anymore, or the person says, I'm feeling fine, I think I don't need this anymore. And within a matter of a couple of days, they're in trouble.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a break, Mike. It's a great conversation about the holidays, seasonal depression, but let's take a break. We're going to come back in a few moments on the Senior Hour. I'm Dr. Gene Dorio with my co-host, Barbara Cochran, on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.
Morning and welcome back to the Senior Hour. We've been speaking with Micheal Dougherty, who is the Community Relations Representative for the Behavioral Health Unit at Henry Mayo Newhall Hospital. Yes.
You said that right.
Yes, I did.
Every time I come on your show and I hear your theme song, When I'm 64, when that came out, I was in my 20s and I was hosting a live teen dance program on television.
Oh, wow.
And I used to think, my goodness, 64, that's up there. Well, now I've passed that number. And I'm thinking, big deal, but it's still funny to me to hear that song and remember that.
Yeah, I don't know why they keep it at 64. Because
Yeah,
I
it
think
should
to
be
myself,
94.
gee, many Christmas, I'm old now.
Paul McCartney's past that too. He should re-record it.
That's right, I think
when I'm
so.
72 or whatever he is.
Yeah,
I don't
that's true.
We'll talk to him about that.
But Mike, we were talking about seasonal depression in the
Yes.
first part of the show. Would you care to go over some signs again? I think that's very important for our listeners.
Oh, it's extremely important because family members would probably not pay attention to these because it's not something they would think about. And so if you notice these things, be very aware when you go to visit your mom or dad or a senior this holiday season. Look, if they're having persistent sadness, that's a possibility. Trouble falling asleep or sleeping too much. Maybe they're saying to you, I'm just not sleeping too well here lately. Decreased socialization. Maybe they don't want to play cards with their friends anymore. They don't want to be working in their garden. They don't want to do things that they would normally do with their friends and family. Even maybe saying, I just don't want to talk any longer on the phone. I'm getting a little tired.
Right.
Loss of interest in usual activities, which I've just mentioned. There are things that they're pleasurable that they like doing, and all of a sudden they're saying, I don't want to do that. Excessive worrying, more than normal. Irritability. Things are suddenly just bothering them, and you're wondering, what's going on here? And you know what the senior's going to say, oh, nothing, don't worry about it. I'm just
That's
having a
right.
bad day. Feeling worthless, helpless, or hopeless. Oh, my goodness, if they start giving away their prized possessions, that's right on. And what if they say to you, you'd be better off without me? That's a big one. Mm-hmm. Changes in appetite. They might start eating a lot. They might start eating a lot less. Crying spells. Trouble focusing, remembering, or making decisions. And that would be more than normal if they already have a problem with that. Because somebody that has Alzheimer's or dementia can also be depressed. We find that. In fact, one of the things we have to do in our unit, because we're a state-designated facility, they can't come to us if it's just Alzheimer's or just dementia. They have to have clinical depression if they're feeling suicidal. That has to be the main diagnosis.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because if you have somebody that's going through Alzheimer's or dementia, that's an organic brain problem, and that's different than dealing with depression or schizophrenia or whatever might be going on.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that is a long list.
It is, and there can be more. That's just some. And the main thing is, get them in to see somebody. Mm-hmm. They need to see a mental health specialist.
Get them direction, and that's the hard part. Let me just add that with my patients, what I do see sometimes in terms of their eating habits, they do lose weight. Mm-hmm. And you start to notice that, and that in particular, that becomes a full-blown problem after a while. When it gets to 10 or 20 pounds, and they're done. And plus, sometimes their hygiene becomes poor as well, and how they dress and take care of themselves, and sometimes even how they're taking care of their pets and even their home.
Yeah.
So I get to see these, and fortunately for me, I'm able to ask them about their issues, their psychological issues, as opposed to their physical ailments that they face as well. And that, to me, with my acknowledging that allows them to open up. And, for me knowing also that there are different resources that we have in this community that I can then point them in the right direction.
Well, you bring up two really good points, Dr. Dorio, and this is something we see in the behavioral health unit at Henry Mayo all the time. And that is people coming in who are dealing with clinical depression. They may not have eaten for a week or more. And the second thing is, yes, they tend to not care about their hygiene. Those two things really seem to take place frequently.
That's right. And many people with depression don't change their clothes.
Yeah.
I mean, they wear the same things over for an extended period of time, and that is a really good indicator.
So we want family members to be aware of these things so that if they see them, they can say, maybe we need to talk about this. And don't just take, I'm okay for an answer. If it's really obvious they're not, you don't want to leave it that way, because I'm going to say this once again, not to frighten people, but it's a fact. Depression can lead to suicide.
That's very true.
Yep.
Very true.
All great points, and I think and I hope during this time that seasonal depression is recognized by the many caregivers and family members that are out there trying to get their seniors through this time of the year. We appreciate it, Mike, for you being on the show today, and everything you bring to the community, because certainly you are a clear resource for so many of our seniors to help them out, get them through every day.
Well, I know you have to close the show, but just so I don't go out as the voice of doom, I just want to say happy holiday to everybody and all of your listeners.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
There you go.
We are sponsored by Advanced Audiology and Comfort Keepers in-home care. Listen to us next week on the Senior Hour. Now go and enhance your quality of life.
You worry because your mom and dad aren't as active and are finding it more challenging to live on